And as one does, I was going through the shelves and I saw Hannah Arendt on revolution. I thought, I remember that. I pulled it out and I opened it and I turned a few pages and I stopped and I thought, wow, this is amazing. This woman is incredible. So that was the moment I fell in love with Hannah Arendt.
Mm-hmm. I just introduce a little bit about the backgrounds because we have just finished 2 days very fruitful conference on Hannah Arendt. And now we have the chance to do a short interview, to share the feelings, to talk about several things today. So now here you see me, Professor Baehr and Professor Yehao here, but we also have friends here outside of the screen, but no problem. We just have a casual talk. So first, I would like to ask Professor Yehao to share what's the background, what was about the society, and what have we done the last 2 days? Yeah.
This is the first formal gathering of the Hannah Arendt Society of Taiwan, and of course that society is organized due to the fact that Hannah Arendt has become more and more important in Taiwan, and a lot of her ideas are quite relevant for us and very insightful for us to reflect upon what's happening here in Taiwan, especially as we face quite a lot of political challenges and sort of the new waves of populism and some problems with parliamentary politics. And even the threat from the mainland China, and a lot of people worry about the fate of Taiwanese democracy. So Hannah Arendt talked about a lot of things, and I think quite a lot of her ideas, especially with the origin of totalitarianism and how people, the ordinary people, behave and their attitude towards authoritarianism, or even more rigid and extreme version of that, or on the brink of totalitarian regime. And people worry about that, whether Taiwan is moving into that sort of situation and whether democracy can cope with the threat from totalitarian regime. So we would like to read more of Hannah Arendt's ideas, and that is why we formed this society as a response to our current actual political situation. So we formed the society last year, and this is our first conference, a formal one, and we are so grateful. We managed to invite Professor Baehr to come to Taipei to talk about Hannah Arendt. So he's our keynote speaker, and the conference, the 2-day conference, is centered around Professor Baehr's keynote speech. So that's it. And we've just finished 2 days of hard work, and now it's about time we have to ask Professor Baehr, could you give us some feedbacks on how do you feel about our conference, and maybe you can give us some suggestion of how our society can proceed and go about in the future.
Well, thank you. I was very honored to be invited to talk at the conference, and I was very excited at the prospect of coming and meeting the colleagues in the Hannah Arendt Society of Taiwan. I think this is a wonderful initiative, and it's a very Arendtian thing, because she was somebody always very keen that people acted, that they sought to bring people together. This is what has happened here. In fact, what's very impressive about conference is not only the number of people who showed up for it, but the combination of scholars from different departments, different disciplines, from different parts of Taiwan. And that's a very nice thing. Often in the academic world these days, especially when grants are so important to get, the lecturers or professors, they leave their lecture and they go straight to their office, start hammering away at the keys, trying to get that grade A publication going. And it does become a bit of a factory. But here there's the atmosphere in the scholarly sense is much more relaxed, more congenial, and in that way more communicative. So I've had a wonderful time here, and it's been great.
And I'm sure my colleagues will let us.
So, thank you, Professor Peter, for joining our conference for the previous days. So, I would like to know your thought about raising the attention of not just Hannah Arendt's writings, but Hannah Arendt's scholarship around Eastern Asian countries. So, just like what I said, there's a rising studies or attention to Hannah. So, what's the background or why that happens? I would like to know the opinion. Thank you.
I think the interest that people have in a writer is often a kind of broad social, environmental interest, but also a personal one. So I was saying at the conference yesterday that one of the reasons why I believe that Hannah Arendt is attractive to people today is that we live in a state of anxiety and of unease. And unlike writers like Marx, who are very confident about the future and very confident about progress, and like many liberal writers who also very confident, Hannah Arendt is a more tentative thinker. For her, the future is always open. It's open for us to make our contribution to, but it is also open for us to endure, to bear, because there are lots of things in life which we cannot control, but we have to learn to live with. And so there's a kind of a spiritual dimension to it, as well as a political and social dimension. So I think, this is one aspect, because people feel the state of unease or anxiety in the world today. A thinker like Hannah Arendt, who is so open, is welcoming to many people. But I also do believe that we fall in love with thinkers. And I mean that not entirely sarcastically. And I just want to give you an example of this briefly. I remember reading, as an undergraduate student, or I should say trying to read, Hannah Arendt's On Revolution. And I was in my 20s, and I was living in England, and I was a student at the University of Leicester. And I remember buying this book and thinking that, great, this is going to be a fantastic overview of revolutions. And I couldn't understand it. The approach to me seemed so strange. And then I came across a review of Eric Hobsbawm, a Marxist historian I very much admire. And he trashed the book. He said the book was terrible. So I thought, right. And then, about 30 years later, I happened to be teaching in Newfoundland. I'd got a job in Newfoundland, Eastern Canada. And I was in a secondhand bookshop. And as one does, I was going through the shelves and I saw Hannah Arendt on revolution. I thought, I remember that. I pulled it out and I opened it and I turned a few pages and I stopped and I thought, wow, this is amazing. This woman is incredible. So that was the moment I fell in love with Hannah Arendt.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, we can talk about the time for a thinker, when it's a good time for her to rise. But at one level, it's how a thinker affects you. And I'm sure we've all had the same sort of experience as I have had. In one time in our life, we can come across an author and they mean nothing to us.
Mm-hmm.
And then another time, we can come across the same author and they blow us away. And we say, we've got to know more. And, we develop a passion for this thinker. And there were so many things about Arendt that I grew impassioned about. I loved her independence of mind. I loved her ability to make distinctions between things. I loved her attempt to be clear. I loved her courage. Probably most of all, her willingness to say really what she believed, including things that were very unpopular to her own group, to her own constituency. Because it's very easy for us to criticize groups that we don't like.
Yeah.
That's easy. But to be able to reflect on the problems of one's own group and to talk about that honestly, which she did, that shows courage.
Yes.
And I saw that in Arendt, and it inspired me. I thought, I may not have been able to understand Arendt very well before, but I know in my heart the kind of thinker I've always admired, and a thinker that I would try to be if I could be as courageous. So that's a long answer to your question, but to sum up, I think there are kind of social conditions of unease and anxiety that make really worth looking at. But in the end, everybody comes to Hannah Arendt on their own, and on their own terms and in their own way.
It's perfect. I think, as we all agree that Hannah Arendt is very critical thinker, very independent. As you just mentioned, that she has courage to think critically, and also in the sense of she speak independently in the public, not just within her own circle. Naturally, she has a lot of correspondence with different scholars, thinkers, and in her age, in her generation, actually, she faced different very practical situation that she wanted to respond. And I think nowadays we can see we have also gotten into a very complicated situation all over the world. The rise of the right wings and the wars over places, and suppressions and freedoms. People always say that we're fighting in different levels, different situations, according to different stance or others' views, values. What do you think an intellectual, or you already mentioned to us before that maybe it's not about intellectual, it's about Hannah's term as a thinker. What do you expect a thinker or independent scholars within the university or other situation? What do you expect them to do for their own situations?
Well, I think the most important thing that the scholar can do beyond the scholarship, in other words, if the scholar is addressing a broader public, is to try to be truthful and is try to be honest. And that starts by being honest with oneself about one's own limitations, and also the need to be a responsible thinker. A responsible thinker means many things. It means trying to protect the spaces in which you are in so that they can be open. But it also means being modest enough to know that there is a lot that you don't know, and there is a lot you just should not comment about. It's about knowing your limitations. And earlier today, my friends, colleagues, and I were talking about the problem of the vanity of intellectuals, their sense that they constantly have to weigh in and comment on things that often they don't know very much about. And I think Arendt tried not to do this. Sometimes she did, and when she did, I don't think her comments were particularly illuminating. But intellectual is not a way I think of myself. I think of myself as just a scholar. A scholar who also tries to talk to the public when I can, but to know my limits. And when I'm talking to the public, not to advise them what to do, and never to tell them what to do, but to perhaps draw out certain things of current life that I see, which seem to me important, to try and clarify those things, to put them in a language that people will not understand, and then leave people to make up their own minds.
Great. So I think that in these situations, many scholars on, in general, public intellectuals, they have their own limitations all the time, no matter what kind of difficulty they face, maybe their own difficulties or maybe something from the outside. But I think what you have mentioned is that Hannah Arendt's courage, that is the point that we always inspired by her works and her history. And this is the reason why I think this is a very timely move that to found a Hannah Arendt society in Taiwan, or for especially not just we have already read a lot of the work talking about Hannah Arendt in English, but we are also very keen to see more Chinese language user scholar to involve Hannah Arendt in their future research and study, and to maybe not necessarily to spread Hannah Arendt's spirit, but at least we can think with her, we can do action with her. That is what important, I think, for our times as well. And any other questions that maybe we can share?
Could you share some of the ideas you are working with in social political theory these days or in the near future?
Well, I've been working on various things. One of the things I have been working on is the predicaments of exile. Because exile is a very common feature, not just now. It has been for centuries. So there is a diasporic Hong Kong community, and there have been diasporic communities, from Russia, from Germany, from everywhere you can think of. How do people deal with exile? In some ways, exile is a common predicament. It doesn't matter what the exile group is. And in other ways, there are very specific issues according to the exile group itself. So I have been looking at that. I've also been doing research on a quite different theme, although on the work of somebody who themselves was an exile for a while, And this is a man called Günther Anders. And Günther Anders, whose name was originally Günther Stern, was Hannah Arendt's first husband. And like Hannah Arendt, when the Nazis took over in Germany, he went to America. Unlike her, he never developed a reputation there. She was in New York. He went to Los Angeles, where other members of the Frankfurt School were, people like Adorno and Burkhardt. He didn't get on very well with them. He didn't very much like that kind of style of intellectual work. And he's a very fascinating person. He worked as a kind of odd-job man to make a living when he was in Los Angeles. And after the war, he went back, not to Germany, but he went back to Austria, or went to Austria, I should say, and he lived there. And for him, the great event of his life, after the destruction of European Jews that we call the Holocaust, was Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And the destruction of those cities by nuclear weapons literally revolutionized his thinking. He believed that for the first time, human beings were confronting something totally unprecedented. Today, many people are concerned about climate change. Climate change is very fragile, and we're still not really sure where it will lead.
Mm-hmm.
But we know that if there was an intercontinental missile exchange between the nuclear powers, the world would end. Every living thing would probably be destroyed in a few minutes. And he believed that this possibility, this prospect, was so grave that it was his obligation to try and think about it very deeply. And he spent the next 30, 40 years writing books and essays on this, and took a leading role in the international anti-nuclear movement. And I have become very appreciative of Anders. And it's a strange thing, because it has to be said that when one reads Hannah Arendt's letters to various people, she never really speaks about him nicely, you know. And so, and neither does the biography, the main biography of Arendt, give him much credit. And so I thought, this is terrible to say, I thought, this guy, Günther Anders, he sounds a bit like a loser. It's a dreadfully silly thing to think. And then I started to read him, and I was so, and am so impressed. This is a man of profound insight, who has produced a whole philosophy of how to think about the prospect of our annihilation. And one of the things he grapples with is the difficulty of imagining something that has never happened before. We can imagine another exile. We can imagine another war. But there is no such thing as a nuclear war. There is just simply annihilation. How do we think that? What do we do about it? He said we're living in a dream. This thing is so big, we don't want to think about it. We don't. So that's another project. I have others, but I think that's probably enough for now.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's really great to hear the ideas, and we are all looking forward to read it. Do you know when we will be published, or do you have set your own target for that?
No, I have other things to finish first.
All right.
I'm not going to talk
no
about
pressure.
that.
It's just like all intellectuals when we talk about when can I see your next paper? Then don't mention. We all know that. Okay, thank you so much. I think it's all for today. Thank you so much.
It's been wonderful to talk with you, and thank you all colleagues for this great occasion of the Hannah Arendt Taiwan Society Conference.
Thank you so much.
Bye.